unpredictable world of fantasy sports, when all hope seems lost and chaos and confusion rule, one hero will rise. And change everything. GoingFor2.com. Because no one remembers the extra point.
What is going on, guys? All right, welcome to episode 91 of the Armchair Fantasy Show. I'm your host, of course, Jeff Lambert. You can follow me on Twitter at JeffLambert77. Live every Friday night on Facebook, Periscope, YouTube, and Twitch, and of course syndicated on all your major podcast networks. I have two guests tonight. My co-host, Mr. Ryan Searfoss, chose to go to a baseball game tonight, so he couldn't make the podcast. First guest we have tonight is one of GoingFor2's own, Mr. Justin Skywalker, and I'm going to butcher your last name. How do you say it?
Palizzi.
All right, Mr. Justin Skywalker Palizzi, man. How you doing tonight, man?
I'm doing good. I went to the gym right before I hopped on, so I'm a little pumped and excited to be here.
Good stuff. All right, and our other guest, it's the first time on the show, Mr. Scott Fishbowl 8 winner himself, Mr. Sam Stompy Lane. How you doing tonight, man?
Gentlemen, what's going on? I did not go to the gym right before this. By the way, Ryan went to a Pirates game, and I'm a St. Louis Cardinals fan, so I will never respect him again for that.
See, and before that happened, y'all were going to have like a love fest of Lamar Jackson on the podcast, because he's been pumping Lamar Jackson this whole offseason, and I saw you had an article out there about Lamar Jackson as well.
I fight the good fight on that one, so it would be nice to talk to somebody who believes in him as much as I do.
All right, good stuff. Hey, Stompy, while we got you on here, let's go ahead and get you. Where else can we find you? I know you co-host a bunch of shows. You're kind of a little bit everywhere.
Yeah, I'm a little bit of a podcast whore. I am the co-host of the Dynasty Diagnostic. That's DYNO Diagnostic on Twitter with my friend Eitan Mosier. That's ETAN Mosier on Twitter. The co-host the Superflex Super Show and that's Superflex Show on Twitter with my friend John Hogue at Superflex Dude and James Catulus at _James the Brain. And finally, I write for FF Statistics, and you can find them at ffstatistics.com and at ffstatistics _ on Twitter. All
right, good stuff. And Justin, besides GoingFor2, I know you got some other ventures out there too. What else are you doing?
Yeah, so you guys could actually follow me on Twitter at Palizzi _21. That's POLIZZI _21. And I actually run a fantasy podcast as well, the Full Football Fanalist podcast. You can follow us at FootballFull. That's FAUX. All
right, good stuff, guys. All right, so I mentioned in the opening, Stompy, that you won Scott Fishbowl 8. All three of us are in the Scott Fishbowl 9. I believe, Justin, it's your first time in, right?
I was actually in Scott Fishbowl 8 last year, but I tried to put that in the past as it wasn't
it wasn't too very good. So you were in it, but you weren't really in it. I got it. Good
yeah,
stuff.
Exactly.
So Stompy,
the bright spot for me was I was able to land Barkley. That's all I did.
Good stuff. All right, Stompy. So tell us a little bit about Scott Fishbowl 8 and how cool was it to win that thing last year?
Well, I mean, so it was my first year in the, I guess, industry in the community. So, and then obviously my first year in Scott Fishbowl. So that was really awesome. It was kind of surreal. It was a whirlwind of a season. It definitely kind of jump started my quote unquote career in the community. being one that wants to kind of break into the community and start hopefully making money at some point, you get notoriety right away. So that's really awesome. Cool. It was also very exhilarating considering that I actually lost, or I was losing at the end of the Monday night game, the final week, and there was a stat correction about an hour after the after that game ended, and I ended up winning by like 0.3 points.
Wow. I didn't realize that was how you won. That is crazy to win on a stat correction. That is, I would be upset if I was the guy that lost that one.
Oh, poor Kurt. Poor Kurt.
And Justin, so you said this is your second year in. I know you don't want to talk about last year. Just talk a little bit about this year and how you thought the draft went and, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, last year, actually, I felt like I waited on quarterback too late. So this year I tried a different approach and try to get quarterbacks a little bit earlier, especially the ones that I was really high on. And I know we'll get into that a little bit later. But this year, that was my approach, try to target quarterbacks a little bit earlier. Last year, unfortunately, I had a lot of injuries that didn't really go my way. I'm not using that as an excuse. It comes with the territory when you play fantasy football. Of course,
yep.
You can't control the injuries in real life. So, but I'm excited to redeem myself this year. Sub-Zero fighting a division. So let's get it.
All right, good stuff. I, too, didn't have a very good showing. I actually missed the playoffs just barely. I think I actually missed it by a tiebreaker. But I did have the guy who actually had the most points in the entire league. He went undefeated for the regular season, and his name escapes me right now. But he was in my division, so obviously that was I was sort of against some tough odds already because he was killing it. I think he actually ended up being like the 4th or 5th highest scoring team ever in the Scott Fish Bowl. So crazy stuff there, but. Let's go ahead and jump into some news and notes here. We've got some good stuff to talk about. Usually the news and notes this time of year is not very exciting, but we got some good stuff to talk about. So let's go ahead and do that real quick.
News and notes from around the league.
All right, so the first one I got on here just broke today, actually, is the Tyreek Hill news. Obviously not getting a suspension. Pretty much, regains all his value. If you own him currently in Dynasty, Stompy, are you trying to move him? Or are you holding him? Because he's kind of got a high value right now with this news.
I think there is definitely a sell window here for a couple days, just a short one. And I think you would be doing yourself. I'll say this. I wouldn't be actively looking to trade him, but I would float him out there just to see what you could get, because you never know if you could somehow get a starting running back or like a wide receiver one, a running back one in a 2020 first. Like, you just don't know if that can happen or not. So I would be floating it out there, seeing what I could get, but I would not be actively trying to trade him.
Yeah, good point. I think that you make a good point there, that not trying to actively put him out there, but if you get an offer you can't refuse, you're basically going to have to move him. So what about you, Justin? What do you think of the situation here? Are you moving up in your rankings? Is he a first-round pick now?
He's definitely moving up in my wide receiver rankings, and I think Mahomes is going to have to be adjusted in my rankings as well. I actually had him 4th, bearing the fact that Tyreek may be suspended.
Right.
And to me, that's huge because they were both reliant on each other and their how successful they were last year. So I think I'm definitely going to have to adjust my quarterback rankings now. Probably put Mahomes back up at 1, being that he's probably going to play a full 16 games this season. So I'm not like before we jumped on here. I said as a fantasy person, I'm glad he's playing. Of course, I drafted him in Scott Fish Bowl in the 5th round, so I'm excited for that value there. But as a human being, that's a whole nother conversation for a whole nother time.
Yeah, agreed. I think there's some things there that I don't know if I necessarily think that he's going to be. I think he's exonerated in the logs, exonerated by the NFL, but I think something did happen there. We just don't know what it is, and I don't want to speculate. All right, the next one we got 2 running backs with potential holdouts. Melvin Gordon actually came out and said it publicly. Zeke kind of leaked it out there and then eventually confirmed it. So Melvin Gordon and Ezekiel Elliott both potentially holding out. Justin, what do you think about the situation going there?
The Melvin Gordon one is very peculiar to me because I know a lot of people are going around saying, the Chargers were 4-0 in the 4 games that he didn't play last year. But, that had more so to do with how well Phillip Rivers and that offense is playing as opposed to what they were able to do on the ground, because in those 4 games, for a total of 73 carries between Eckler and Jackson, they only averaged 3.6 yards per carry. So it's not like they were efficient running the ball. That's a whole nother dimension that Gordon brings to that offense. And listen, the clock is ticking on Rivers, LA, I mean, the Chargers are the second team in LA. They have to make noise this year, and if not this year, when? And I think they need Gordon going forward to do that. I think eventually he gets paid.
Yeah, you put up a good point there too about they need this little short window, because I heard that they're playing in a soccer stadium and they can't sell it out, and they're in LA. Mm-hmm. So you figure you're sort of the fifth or sixth team on that totem pole out there when you got the Lakers and the Clippers doing their thing, and obviously you got the Rams that just went to the Super Bowl. So they're having a hard time filling that stadium. They need Melvin Gordon there just to sort of get the fans in the seats, and they got to win to sort of fill that stadium up. Stompy, let's go to you. What are your thoughts on these two holdouts, or potential holdouts?
I'm always for guys, especially running backs, that want to get their guaranteed money. I was never against Le'Veon Bell holding out. I get it from a Melvin Gordon standpoint because he's entering. I think they picked up his 5th-year option.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. But he's entering a contract year next year, and I think he needs to get that guaranteed money. In terms of specifically dynasty, and really redraft this season, if he leaves LA, I mean, really depending on where he goes, but I'm still moving him down my rankings, and especially in dynasty, where we know he was going to get the bell cow role. He was going to get like 75% of the touches there or more, and you can't guarantee that once he leaves. So if he leaves LA, and I mean, at this point, I would think that Chargers to not sign him, because they have a lot of contracts coming up. I know Boas is coming up. I believe Ingram's coming up. Hunter Henry's coming up. Keenan Allen's coming up in the next couple of seasons. If they pay him $14 million a year, they're going to really hamstring themselves. And it's tough to say because they're in a win now window as well. I think it's a 50-50 shot they don't sign him. And if that happens, I mean, obviously Justin Jackson is a must pick up this season. I don't think Eckler gets really affected by that because we saw what he did last year without Melvin Gordon. Right. And I'm not touching him just in terms. I'm not moving him up in my rankings there. But after that in Dynasty, I wouldn't think Justin Jackson's value is pretty high right now, and I would be selling on that because if Gordon leaves, I would think that they draft a running back in a strong class next season. Yeah. Yep. So hopefully Gordon stays for this year for Gordon owners, but like I said, it's a 50-50 shot they don't.
Yeah, I think if he gets moved, like you said, good point there. I think you got to move him down just because you look around the league and what teams right now really have a situation at running back that they need help. I mean, I know Melvin Gordon is a great running back, but you look around the league and most running backs are pretty much settled in. I think the only team that he can go to where his value might increase would be Tampa Bay. With that offense, we got Ronald Jones there, Peyton Barber. Neither one of them is kind of taking the reins there. But other than that,
maybe Houston.
Houston would be the other one. I was
going to say Houston.
Yeah, Houston might be the other one too, where he could definitely fit in, jump right in, and be a lead back there as well.
So does he sit out then? Stompy, if you think they're not going to sign him, does he sit out this year, or do you think he plays it out?
Well, I mean, so he's either asking for a trade. He's asked for a trade or a contract, right? I think he's fully prepared to sit out. And they even showed a clip. Was it on ESPN that showed him that he should hold, or when they were talking about Le'Veon Bell, right? He should hold out. So I definitely can see him sitting the season out if he doesn't get what he wants.
Yep, I agree. I think it's a situation to monitor for sure. And if I was a Gordon owner in Dynasty, I'd be watching this very closely. All right, that's it for the really big news and notes there. Let's go ahead and just jump into our rosters. Of course, like I said we just finished up. You have finished your drafts, right, guys? Both of you have finished completely?
Yes, sir.
Finished like an hour ago.
Oh, really?
Wow.
Yeah.
All right, so let's go ahead and Justin, we'll start with you and your roster and what you think you did good and what you think you did bad. So we'll start off with the good. I'm going to put your roster here up on screen for the audience at home so they can look at it while you talk about it. Just tell us what you think you did really good on your draft this year.
Right. So, I mean, as I stated before, one of my favorite picks in the draft was, getting Tyreek Hill in that 5th round. Now, I actually wasn't really targeting him. I actually got sniped the pick right before for Kenyon Drake, who I'm very high on going into next year. And one of the reasons why I was targeting Drake was because I had drafted Melvin Gordon first overall, and that was way before. That was like a few days right before the news came out that he, said pay me or trade me. And, so I see Tyreek Hill there in the 5th, and I'm thinking, why not? I mean, those are the kind of picks that you need to make in a league with 1,200 teams in order to make it to the finals and eventually win this thing. So, I went ahead and took Tyreek Hill in the 5th round. That was one of my favorite picks. And the round right after, I was debating on taking Carson in the 6th round. And I saw that there was a little quarterback run between the ending of the 5th and the beginning of the 6th. And I was worried, like last year, that I was going to wait and end up getting my second quarterback towards the ending of the draft, and someone I wasn't comfortable with. So instead of taking Carson, I pivoted and went with Phillip Rivers, which I was very, very happy I did, because in the 7th round, Carson fell to me anyways. Nice. So I ended up getting the guy I wanted to get in the 6th round regardless. Nice. I wish I had a little bit more running back depth. Carson is my RB2. I was able to lock up that backfield, however, and I drafted Rashad Penny 2 rounds later.
Good strategy.
So I was very happy about that. And one thing I was very proud of that I did was one of the guys in my division didn't draft a quarterback until I believe it was Derek Carr. And I ended up taking Andy Dalton out of spite, just so that he didn't have any more options. He ended up taking Derek Carr and Dwayne Haskins with his next 2 picks. So yikes. I was happy I was able to do that. But overall, I really do like my roster. It does a lot of question marks. I got Royce Freeman. Don't know what he's going to end up doing in Denver with the split with Lindsey. You got Emmanuel Sanders coming off the Achilles. You got Devin Funchess finally playing with a legitimate accurate quarterback. What that offense is going to be, a lot of mouths to feed. So, a lot of question marks, but if they all hit, then, who knows what, And one of my other favorite picks, which I don't know if it was Scott Fishbowl and more so the scoring, or maybe because his value has just been steadily decreasing because of the injuries and Andy Dalton being his quarterback. But AJ Green in the 4th to me was when I saw him there, I didn't even hesitate. I think I took like 30 seconds to punch that pick.
Nice, solid pick there. So I'm looking at your roster on screen here, and I see you got my boy that I've been hyping up all off season is going to be my breakout candidate of the year. Ryan hates this guy, but Mike Gesicki is your tight end 1. How do you feel about that going into the season?
Well, listen, he's very athletic. He was very underwhelming last year as a rookie tight end, and usually tight ends, it's the thinnest position. I say it's the second thinnest position in all of fantasy sports. The only other thinnest position is probably catcher in fantasy baseball. And, with the tight end position, you want to get these guys like this, like especially in Scott Fishbowl, because they score so much. So what I did this year was I kind of just took some flyers late round, and I was actually targeting Hooper, who actually went, I believe, was 3 picks before me. So that was the guy I actually really wanted there. But I ended up getting Gesicki, who I think can really succeed, but I think it's solely based on if Fitzpatrick is quarterback in Miami. Yep. And if Fitzpatrick is the quarterback in Miami, I think Gesicki could have a good year.
See, I think I'm on the opposite side of you. I think if Fitzpatrick is the quarterback, I think he actually hurts Gesicki. I don't know if you knew this or not, but Fitzpatrick, as far as history goes, targets the receivers more than any other quarterback in history, and as far as percentage-wise. So he doesn't make those tight ends very much. So I think if Rosen goes in there, young quarterbacks tend to lean on their tight ends a little bit because they're in the middle of the field. It's the easiest throw to make. Gesicki, who's a big guy, athletic, fast. So Rosen could be looking for him a little bit more than Fitzpatrick would. He's taking those shots downfield like he always does. So I think Rosen helps Gesicki more so than Fitzpatrick does.
Yeah, I'm just not a Parker guy, and I just look at that wide receiver corps in Miami. I'm just not impressed with anyone. The only one I'd probably target out of that group would probably be Stills because of, like you said, Fitzpatrick likes to throw the ball down the field. So, I mean, Fitzpatrick is a guy who likes to get his guy. They're the best receivers the ball. He's done it when he was in New York. He did it last year when he was with Tampa. So that's just more so how I view it. But like you said, if Rosen does come in and that is something that he's going to do, then, I mean, your guy is going to hit, and my tight end 1 is going to hit, so I'll be happy.
Good stuff. All right, Stompy, let's go to you, man. Let's talk about your 2019 championship Scott Fishbowl roster here. What you got for me?
All right, so, I mean, last year, and if you've been following me, I posted it a few times. I went running back heavy early. I got Alvin Kamara, Christian McCaffrey, Joe Mixon, and 3 of my top 4 picks. And then I ended up picking Phillip Lindsay up off of waivers, I believe, before week 1. So I won it basically because I was running back heavy, and really my only viable wide receiver was Robert Woods. And then I also had George Kittle picked up late, which definitely didn't hurt anything. So I just decided to go with what works. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, I suppose, even though it's not like a continuous thing that's been going on. So that was the reason. And really, if you went to FF Statistics and Addison Hayes had built a spreadsheet that looked at Scott Fishbowl scoring and looked at like who the top players over the last 18 or 19 years were in this type of scoring. And if you looked at the top scores, it was mostly running backs. There was a couple QBs sprinkled here and there. And then I believe the first wide receiver was like the 39th player on that list. And it was like 2014 Antonio Brown, which if you can remember, I believe was an 1,800-yard double-digit touchdown campaign that season.
Yep.
So that just tells you exactly how much or what a wide receiver needs to do to be a top scorer in this type of scoring system. So that's why I chose the strategy I did, going running back heavy early. And really that first pick, I actually kind of switched at the last minute. Jacob Rickroad and Warren Sharp kind of convinced me to go with Dalvin Cook. I was actually going to go Joe Mixon, but then I switched it up at the last minute, went Dalvin Cook. Because and they convinced me he's got top 5 upside this season.
Yep.
And then and Joe Mixon now has some issues on the offensive line. He had I believe for the season.
Exactly.
Yep.
And then I believe somebody else just retired. I can't remember exactly, but I like Mixon this year, but there's some questions there. And then with my second pick, I went Nick Chubb because that dude, I think, is just probably one of the best, if not the best, pure running back in the game.
Agree 100%.
I think he could be like 1,500 yards on the ground type season this season. And no, Kareem Hunt does not scare me. He's going to be 8 games, 9 weeks by the time he gets back. He's going to need to still probably get into football shape a little bit, so it's still going to be at least a couple weeks after that before he really sees the field, because I believe a suspension, you're not allowed to practice. And even then, like I could see him taking some touches, but I view him more as a Duke Johnson role at that point.
Right. And
maybe he takes 5 carries, but when you're doing 15 to 20, 25 carries on the ground, it's not going to affect him. And what Nick Chubb did last year was extremely efficient. Yep. And this offense only got better, which to me means that they're going to score more. He's going to get more goal line carries. I just think Nick Chubb also has that top 5 upside.
Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say I'm all over Nick Chubb as well, and I actually would have gone with Nick Chubb had it been a regular scoring league. But I think the pass catching ability of these running backs is what I looked at, and I didn't want to go with Chubb there because he's not going to have that pass catching upside. But in my redraft leagues and all my regular PPR leagues that I'm drafting, Nick Chubb is going 112 for me if I'm taking him there.
Yeah, and that's fair enough. But if you look at what was available there, it's just one of those things where it's like I got a pass catcher in Dalvin Cook. Joe Mixon went. Todd Gurley's there. Damian Williams is there. I mean, maybe James Conner is the pick there, but there's still question marks there. For me, yep. Nick Chubb, for some reason, I'm not afraid of Kareem Hunt whatsoever. And Nick Chubb has a floor, one of the highest floors among running backs to me this season, just because I think he like I said, one of the best pure runners in the game. And after what he did last season in his rookie season, despite seeing a lot of stacked boxes, I felt comfortable with him there. I didn't plan on taking quarterback early, but when Aaron Rodgers falls to you in the back end of the third, it was kind of just like I can't not take him.
Yeah.
Right. And it's crazy because if you look at it, it went Patrick Mahomes, and then nobody went until Baker Mayfield in the back end of the second. Andrew Luck as well. And then even Deshaun Watson went before him. And that's kind of crazy to me because if you look at the scoring in SFB 9, it awards obviously 6-point touchdowns, but you need to take into consideration the -4 for interceptions.
Yep.
And look at last year, Aaron Rodgers had a 25 touchdown to 2 interception ratio.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And he has like a 300, I think I've memorized these numbers, a 338 touchdown to 80 interception ratio over his career. And he's only had double-digit interceptions in 2 seasons, and I believe it was in 2 of his first 3 seasons.
Wow.
He's had single-digit seasons ever since. So, and I think a lot of people forget like how nuanced this scoring is. Like that -4 per interception, I don't think crosses anybody's mind, but I mean it's an important thing. And then there's I believe a -6 for pick sixes as well.
Yeah, there is.
So,
yep.
Yeah, and the thing is, Rodgers, I believe, only had a 4.2 touchdown percentage last season, and that was like 2% below his career. So he is bound for positive regression this season. And I mean, 35 touchdowns, 4,500 yards is not out of the realm of possibility. And really, his ceiling is like Patrick Mahomes' ceiling of like 5,000 yards, 50 touchdowns.
Yep.
And we'll see. I mean, I don't think he'll get there, but he's still one of the safest and the highest ceiling quarterbacks in this format. So it was kind of a no-brainer to take him there.
Yeah, I agree 100%. That's an awesome pick.
And then, yeah, I mean, we'll keep going. Devontae Freeman, he's been kind of a guy I've been harping on this offseason. He's been forgotten about a little bit. But if you look back, I mean, he basically had 3 straight RB1 seasons.
Yep.
And he's a pass catcher, and it's not scary. He's not Tevin Coleman. Quadri Olson is not going to really take touches. He's basically insurance for Freeman. And they upgraded their offensive line.
Yep.
So, I mean, I get it. There's injury risks there, and I think that's baked into his ADP where he's going in the 4th round in a lot of drafts this season. But if he hits, he could be another RB1 that I have on this squad. Mitchell Trubisky, he's more of a high upside, high floor guy just because he can run the ball, and he's in his 2nd season in a Matt Nagy offense. Chris Carson, another guy that, I mean, he's been electric, and like my friend John Hogue likes to say, he's an electric playmaker, but he's been fantastic since he's entered the league. I'm not afraid of Rashad Penny. The only fear is injuries, but he still played 14 games last season, and he had over 1,100 yards. And so if he plays a full season, another guy with wide receiver 1 upside there. So I obviously went running back heavy early, and then I started taking my wide receivers.
Yep.
Because really the last couple of seasons, wide receiver seems to be extremely deep.
It is.
Last year I got Robert Woods in the 10th round. We're looking at a guy like Tyler Boyd, who was better with AJ Green in the game than without, and he still finished as a wide receiver 2 last season. He's in a better offense there. I like him a lot this season as a wide receiver 2. I also took Andy Dalton, but I think he could actually be a back-end QB1, believe it or not, in a Zach Taylor offense. He was, I believe, QB 14 last season before he got injured.
Yep.
So in a better offense, a less stagnant offense, we'll say, than a Marvin Lewis, Bill Lazor offense, who knows? It could be a back-end QB1.
Yep.
And I like that stack a lot, Tyler Boyd, Andy Dalton. Curtis Samuel, another guy that I think could be a QB or a wide receiver 2. He was wide receiver 26, I believe, last year from week 5 on. Robbie Anderson, we've seen him be a wide receiver 2, and he was wide receiver. I would have to look this up, but I believe he was a top 10 wide receiver the last 4 games of last season with Sam Darnold.
When Darnold came back from injury.
Yep. Albert Wilson, and Justin, you wanted to start a fight apparently when you said there's no other wide receivers in Miami that you like. Albert Wilson's my dude. Albert Wilson's my guy, but I believe his numbers were he was wide receiver 26 in the first 7 weeks of the season last season. And now he doesn't have Danny Amendola there. He's in an offense that likes to emphasize the slot receiver coming from the Patriots. And I think he also has that wide receiver 2 upside. So I really went with those guys that I don't think they have wide receiver 1 upside, but I believe like I have guys on here that all could become wide receiver 2s. And I think, and from last year, what I saw was that's all you really need in this format. You need your running backs to hit, and you need your wide receivers to be serviceable. And I mean, if I can get 2-3 wide receiver 2s out of this group, including Anthony Miller, I would feel fantastic. And then we'll keep going. Noah Fant, my tight end 1. And that's a little bit risky in this format, I think, just because tight ends there's a premium on tight ends.
Yep.
But if you look at it, if you look at Denver, and being a Broncos fan, I mean, I study them, but if you look at Denver, there's nobody you can really trust overly as a pass catcher there. I like Sutton this year. I don't like Dejon Hamilton, and that's kind of going against the grain of the fantasy community right now. But Joe Flacco's never used a slot receiver. Ed Scangarello, coming over from a Shanahan system, hasn't really used he's coming from a system that doesn't really use a slot receiver. And you could point to Dante Pettis, but I believe Dante Pettis played under 20% of his snaps from the slot last season. So, and we know that they emphasized the tight end last season with George Kittle. We know that Joe Flacco likes to throw to the tight ends. I believe the lowest, or he's averaged 72 targets to his tight end 1 over his career, and reached above 75 6 times in his career. So Noah Fant, being who he is and not being an inline blocker, really could be a matchup nightmare and could be a outlet for Joe Flacco.
Yep, I agree 100% with that one.
And then I saw you took Josh Oliver 5 rounds later than I did, and that's fine. I like Josh Oliver in Jacksonville a lot because of Nick Foles, because of John DeFilippo. They obviously knew how to use Zach Ertz in Philadelphia, and I think that, and again, another situation where you don't really trust any of the wide receivers there. I actually like D.D. Westbrook.
Yep.
And Josh Oliver could make an impact right away as well. Anthony Miller going in the 14th is kind of crazy to me.
That is crazy.
Considering he's the wide receiver 2 in Chicago in a Matt Nagy offense, mind you. And he showed flashes last season. I believe he had 7 touchdowns last season as well.
Very efficient, like 40 receptions.
Could be a red zone threat there. And him being my wide receiver 5, I feel very comfortable. The rest of them are just kind of swings here. Will Disley, I mean, after his first, 2 games last season, he kind of dominated. May as well take him late.
Yep.
Trayvon Wesco, especially after the Chris Herndon news. Trayvon Wesco could be the starting tight end the rest of the season there. J.J. Arcega-Whiteside's got upside. Marquise Goodwin's got upside. Darwin Thompson's got upside. Good stuff. The one thing that I wish I had done, though, is gone a little bit running back heavy earlier. I like my top 4 and even my top 5, but then after that, I'm like, ooh, if one of these guys or 2 or 3 of these guys get hurt, I'm in trouble. But the one guy that's probably the most susceptible to being Devontae Freeman, and I've locked up that backfield in Atlanta. So
good stuff. Yep, good stuff. Now I will say, so I play a lot of DFS, and in DFS, especially when you're early on, you're kind of learning. You study the rosters that win. So you go to the top and you look and see, okay, how do they build their lineup? What were they targeting? What games are they targeting? I kind of did the same thing with the Scott Fish Bowl. I went and looked at your roster from last year and said, okay, what did he do last year that I need to do this year? And it was going RB heavy. I noticed that you had a lot of good RBs last year, so I was like, all right, I'm going to go RB heavy. I'm going to go ahead and bring up my roster here. And I went with my first 4 picks. I went running back. So I got James Conner with my first pick. Then I picked Todd Gurley because I know he's a little bit controversial with the knee injury right now. But my thought is, I'm playing against 1,199 other teams. Todd Gurley will be that sort of difference maker if he does break out. Aaron Jones in the 3rd round, and then I got Devontae Freeman as well. I'm also a big supporter of Devontae Freeman, so I got him as well. in the 4th round. And then my receiver 1 is going to be Chris Godwin, and my tight end 1 is Evan Ingram, which I was pretty happy with. Now, the only problem is with my quarterbacks, I was hoping to get somebody a little bit better than Trubisky and Rivers. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. The quarterback run happened right after I took Ingram, and I got stuck with Mitchell Trubisky and Phillip Rivers. But I'm okay with that. I mean, Trubisky's got some upside. Rivers is probably my safe quarterback. And then to sort of lock up my 3rd quarterback, I took Josh Rosen and Fitzpatrick, so I make sure that I got the quarterback there in Miami. It's not going to be a great quarterback, but all I needed was basically for 2 weeks this year to fill in those spots for me. So that's my roster. I'm gonna keep it short because we're up against the time clock here. So I'm gonna go ahead and we'll go ahead and go to commercial break really quick. And it looks like we may have lost. Let's see. Are you back, Stompy?
I'm back.
All right.
Oh my God, that was so dumb. Sorry about that.
You're all good. You're all good. I saw your little screen disappear. I was like, all right, let me go to a commercial break and see if we can call him back. But it looks like you got back on. Good stuff. All right, quick commercial break, guys. When we come back, we're gonna talk some camp battles. Hang in there.
Fantasy football. It's not just a social interaction anymore. Today's manager plays to win, and the difference between winning and losing is so small, a manager will do whatever it takes to get an edge. Yet the other sites offer the same content at an extremely high cost. It's time to get away from the old and step into the future of fantasy stats. This is StatRoute. StatRoute allows you to find any data set for any player or team in 7 seconds or less, all on a simple, easy-to-use application. Want to see which running back performed best in the snow last season? How about the past 5 seasons? And in the 4th quarter? Or maybe you're unsure of which quarterback to start for the upcoming week. With our Stats IP technology, you can now quickly see how Matt Stafford has performed in the rain, during the second half of the season, in New York, compared with how Russell Wilson has played during primetime games, at home, versus the Rams' new defensive coordinator, Wade Phillips. At StatRoute, it's our mission to deliver state-of-the-art technology guaranteed to keep you ahead of the curve. So, whether you're a casual football fan, a weekly fantasy trash talker, or a DFS hustler, we've got you covered. Welcome to the new standard for stats delivery. We are StatRoute. Take back your league.
All right, guys, welcome back. We just got done reviewing our Scott Fishbowl 9 rosters. Maybe the 3 of us will be in the playoffs this year. Hopefully, maybe I'll meet one of y'all in the playoffs. So now we're going to talk some camp battles. We are a couple days away from most of the camps kicking off. Some of them have already started to kick off. Rookies are reporting to camp. So that's when all the news starts coming out, all this super hype that comes out. We're going to break down some of the more interesting, fancy relevant camp battles that are out there right now. And Justin, we haven't heard from you for a while, so we'll go to you first. What is your biggest camp battle? If you can just watch one camp battle this year, which one are you going to watch?
Well, I know I'm going to go ahead and talk about the first one that we have on this list because it's a very intriguing one, and being that they are the wide receivers that are going to be catching the balls from Aaron Rodgers next year, I think not only one of these guys, but both of these guys could be fantasy relevant next year, and that's Geronimo Allison and MVS. And I think both of them are going to end up starting, depending on, of course, the formation that they come out in next year for the Packers. And I think it's Allison's job and MVS' jobs to lose. Now, depending on the formation that they play, I think MVS is going to play more of the outside because he is the speedster on the offense. You know, you're going to have Devontae Adams on one side, MVS on the other. He's going to be the one to take, the deep threat, the seam routes down the field, take the safety over the top, and then maybe Allison would be the one running the slot. And I also think it would be wise of the Packers to do that because Allison has battled injuries. Last year he had the concussion, then he had the hamstring injury, then he had, I think it was like an abdominal issue as well. So, 3 different injuries, 3 different body parts to fight throughout the year for Allison, and it's pretty underwhelming. And he was actually, when he did play, he was pretty good. He had a really good catch rate, averaged, I think, like 15.6 yards per catch. So he was very, very good when playing. The thing was, the problem was getting him on the field healthy. So I think if Allison does play the slot, that will give him, I guess, you would say, more, time to play throughout the year, whereas he's not going to be the number 2 receiver on the outside playing every snap, more wear and tear on him as the season goes by. So I actually tried targeting one of these guys in Scott Fishbowl. It ended up not panning out. Was thinking about taking St. Brown late to see maybe he could be a flyer, maybe if Allison was to get hurt. But I think that'll be a really good battle this offseason, during training camp for both these guys. But eventually, I think, Packers do like to go three wide receiver sets. So I think ultimately you'll see all 3 of them, including Adams, of course, on the field at the same time.
Yeah, I think we've seen in the past with the Packers, they do have receivers that'll go 1, 2, and 3 deep and be fantasy relevant for sure. Any thoughts on the sort of the underdog there, Mr. Kumro? That was the talk of the preseason last year before he got hurt. Any interest in Kumro going late in some of your drafts?
Right, so he was the reason why I ultimately didn't pull the trigger on St. Brown, because I think if anybody does step up to take any one of those spots, whether it's due to performance and or injury, I think it is him. I mean, we've heard Rodgers hype him up before, and Rodgers doesn't really talk about his teammates much and how well
unless it's bad.
doing.
Yeah, this is bad stuff.
Yeah. So this is the bad part. So exactly. So he actually talked about Kumaro this offseason, and we know how great he was last season. So, I mean, how the hype was at least last season. So, he's definitely a name to keep an eye on. And actually, in our Going for 2 league, I actually took him with one of my last few picks. So, hopefully it pans out. But I don't see him being relevant, like I said, unless one of those guys, if MVS takes a step back and doesn't take a step forward in his second year, or if Allison continues to fight injuries, I don't see him taking being at least relevant in fantasy. And maybe he'll have a small role on the team now as the 4th receiver, maybe specific situations. But as far as fantasy-wise, I can't see him being relevant unless one of those 3 guys get hurt ahead of him.
I agree 100%. I think it's Allison and MVS. I think it's just a matter of how they decide they want to line them up. Because Allison was really good last year when he came in. MVS showed flashes. He was a rookie last year, so you can't expect too much. But he did show some flashes. I think one game I want to say it was against the Patriots. They had their number 1 cornerback on Devontae Adams most of the game, and then MVS started going off, and they actually moved Gilmore over to MVS to shut him down because he was doing so well. So I think if he can get that and be consistent, he's going to be a valuable fantasy asset for sure. All right, Stompy, let's go to you. If you could just watch one camp battle, which one you watching?
I'm going to go a little bit homer here. It'll be Philip Lindsay versus Royce Freeman.
Nice, I like it.
I personally, honestly, I don't care who wins as long as they do well. But I think it's got to be Philip Lindsay's job to lose at this point because of what he did last season. And I get it's a brand new coaching staff. It's a new scheme, which actually benefits Freeman because it's a zone scheme instead of a gap scheme. So it's a one cut and go, and I think that benefits Freeman a lot more than that gap scheme did. But Lindsey just proved a lot last season. He's extremely athletic. He's extremely explosive. He's extremely efficient, and he can catch the ball. And I think that's the thing that puts him over the top is he's a legitimate 3-down back in my mind. If you look at Lindsey's college stats, he had a 53 reception season, I believe, in his junior season. Yes, 53 receptions. And the last 2 seasons he was at CU, he had over 1,700 yards from scrimmage and 17 and 15 touchdowns respectively. And it's not like he's playing in with a bunch of scrubs. It's in the Pac-12. Yes, it's not the SEC. It's not these NFL ready defenses, but it's not the Big 12 either.
Right.
And he dominated. And here's the real I guess the tragedy here is that he went undrafted. I don't know how he goes undrafted. I get it, size, whatever. He's 5'8", 190 pounds, fine. But he proved it over and over again, and he's proven it 3 straight seasons that he can handle a monster workload. I mean, in 2017 he had 301 attempts. Last year he had only 192, but and really the only reason for that was he missed that final game. He would have broken over 200 attempts last season. He also was suspended another game. And the only reason he missed that game was because a helmet to the wrist. And a lot of people point out, well, he's kind of small and flimsy. No, I think anybody who takes a helmet to the wrist probably going to get a broken wrist. So I expect him to take a larger role on this season in terms of the passing work. I can definitely see him being around the 200 carry mark again. I do think the Broncos are going to be a little bit more run heavy. I believe they threw the ball, like they were one of the higher pass to run ratios last season in the NFL, believe it or not.
Wow.
With Case Keenum, which is kind of crazy. They went they had 622 passing plays to 393 run plays last season.
Wow.
That just tells you how much they threw the ball with Case Keenum. What are you doing? Oh my God! But I think they'll shift it a little bit more to the run game. There'll be more touches. I don't think there's that much of a competition, but Royce Freeman's. I mean, all accounts have said Royce Freeman's looked good this offseason. He was running with the ones because Lindsey didn't participate and wasn't able to participate until camp. So it'll be interesting to see what comes out of there. Regardless, I think both are going to be fantasy relevant. And I've said this multiple times, I think both could be top 24 running backs if everything goes right, with Freeman still getting probably 150, 200 touches, Lindsey getting 250-ish touches, and getting most of the passing down or most of the receptions. And yeah, I mean, honestly, and where they're going in drafts, Phillip Lindsay's probably around the 4th round.
Yep.
Freeman's, I believe, like the 8th round. I think both should be targets. And really, it's if you want to go like a zero running back type of, or a pseudo zero running back type of draft this season, those are two guys that I would be targeting.
Yeah, good stuff there. And I'm with you because you said that towards the end there about them both being relevant in fantasy. And I think you're right. I think if you look, I wrote an article about if you look at the coaching staff, I mean, Vic Fangio is a defensive guy. Obviously, usually defensive guys want to run the ball more. He's also coming from the Chicago Bears where they had a two-back system. They had Jordan Howard. They had Tariq Cohen. So he's seen that offense already. And then your offensive coordinator is from my team. You know, he's from the Kyle Shanahan tree, who obviously had Devontae Freeman and Tevin Coleman in Atlanta. So he's kind of got that a little bit going for him as well. So they could just have run a two-back system, and both of them will end up being fantasy relevant. I agree 100% with you on that one.
All right. I hope you're both right with Royce Freeman because I drafted him in Scott Fishbowl. I could definitely use that depth with him. So
definitely. All right, so these next ones here, we'll do some quick fire ones here. We'll keep the analysis down shorter so we can get everything in tonight. Give me one of your other camp battles you're looking at, Justin. Justin?
Oh, sorry, everything lagged out a little bit.
Sorry.
You know what? I'm gonna be a homer as well, and I'm gonna go ahead and talk about the Giants' battle for the number one wide receiver. Now, a lot of people. When we signed Tate, I'm going to be the first one to tell you, as a Giants fan, it didn't make any sense to me. It actually pissed me off more that we actually signed him after the fact that we traded OBJ as well. But I do think it's Shepard's job, regardless of what happens in camp. Tate could come and he can show out. I still think it's going to be Shepard. Shepard's going to be the guy. Now, people are going to look at the box score. They're going to see weeks 14 to 17, those last 4 games where, OBJ was out for the rest of the season and playing, and say, okay, well, Shepard had 9 targets, 7 targets, 6 targets, 9 targets. I mean, basically around his average that he had the previous 12 games in the season with OBJ. But if you watch the games, and I watch every Giants game, I watch every play, whether we're 4-12 or we're 12-4. I mean, it's what we do. That's where we're fans of our teams. And the offense ran through Shepard very, very similar to the way that it was running through OBJ, as far as Shepard was the guy taking the safeties over the top. Shepard was the guy running the outs and the slants, the same patterns that OBJ was running when he was the number one wide receiver. Now, it's easy to say, with the Sherman offense, Tate fits it better because of the style of wide receiver that he is. But the rapport that Shepard has with Eli, that is the first thing on top of my list of why I think Shepard is going to be the guy. But not only that, just the usage and the routes that Shepard runs. It's the slants, and it's the deep routes. So whether you're looking at Jones eventually starting later on in the season, the two things that Jones does very well, whether people want to make fun of us for taking him 6th overall or not, it's a very good deep ball throw because he has a very strong arm, and he can hit the slant pattern pretty much as well as any other quarterback that came out of college last year. So the two things that I see Shep doing well, the two things that I know Daniel Jones could at least hit. So if a quarterback switch was to happen, it wouldn't really worry me. If anything, it would probably be a bump in his production, or at least a bump in where I could see him producing, because, you know, kind of like how you said earlier, Jeff, with Rosen, they're going to rely more so on their go-to guys. So if Shepard's going to be the go-to guy, I could see Jones relying on him. And the reason why I'm bringing up Jones so much is because the noise I hear around from my side of town, from Giants camp, from all the beat writers that I follow, Jones eventually will start this season, and people going into drafts, you know, it's coming around to the draft season. I know we finished Scott Fish Bowl, but redraft season, startup leagues, that time is coming around in about another week or two when we start drafting. Just tread lightly when you're drafting a Giants receiver, not the tight end Ingram. You can go ahead and take him wherever you want, but tread lightly, because there is going to be a quarterback change, and if you don't feel comfortable, as bad as Eli Manning has been the last few years, he's probably the best option at quarterback for these receivers to be fantasy relevant. Yeah,
see, I'll go back and talk about Eli Manning a little bit. I know everybody hates on him because he's not the greatest quarterback in the world right now. He's a little bit struggling over his last couple of years, but the fact of the matter is he supported a wide receiver one pretty much every year of his career. I mean, even, you know, the last couple of years when he kind of got talked down on. I mean, he had OBJ there, and OBJ is an otherworldly talent, and he kind of did a lot on his own. But the fact of the matter is Eli gave him the targets, and he did something with them. So, yeah, right. Good point there for sure. All right, Stompy, let's go to you real quick. Actually, I think we may have lost Stompy again.
Nope, I'm here.
Oh, you're here. All right, Stompy, give us a quick one. Give us one more camp battle.
What about the Philadelphia Eagles running back one situation?
Oof.
Yeah. Ugly. And it might just be a who cares situation at this point now, with Darren Sproles joining the half or the baker's dozen of running backs there. But I mean, it really comes down to Miles Sanders and Jordan Howard. I think he believes that. But the situation is this. I mean, I think a lot of people are just missing Jordan Howard, and they shouldn't be. I don't think anybody's going to tell you he's one of the best running backs in the league. He's probably just above average. But the dude had two 1,100-plus yard seasons in a row, and then he had a 935 yard season last season behind the, according to Football Outsider.
Oh, did we lose him? I think we lost Stompy again. Got some connection issues there. Did. Yeah, got some connection issues with Stompy, it seems. All right, Justin, let's go to you real quick. Give me one more camp battle real quick before we head into the breakout.
I'll go ahead and piggyback on what he was saying. So it sounded like he was in favor of Howard, and I mean, in that backfield, I know they drafted Sanders. I know they bring back Clement. For some reason, they decided to bring back Sproles. I think Adam Scheffler sent out a tweet earlier today, and they have like 8 running backs on that roster going into camp. So Howard is the guy that I would probably feel most comfortable taking, especially because you're going to get him probably in the RB 30 to RB 35 range late in drafts, maybe 7th, 8th round. And he's the guy that I'm going to target because I view him kind of solidifying that LeGarrette Blount role that he had back in 2017. Now, Blount didn't have a great year. He only rushed for, I think it was about 700 yards, only had 2 rushing touchdowns, but averaged 4.4 yards per carry, and he had 181 touches total with reception. So I could see Howard getting close to around 200. And if you're telling me Howard's going to get around 200 touches in an Eagles offense that I fully expect to be better next year, especially if Carson Wentz is healthy,
sign me up.
I mean, I'll take that. You know, it's a muddy backfield, so just give me something for sure.
All right, so he kind of picked up where you left off, Stompy, but you sound like you were going to talk about Howard a little bit. Do you agree with that? You think Howard is the guy to own?
I don't think anybody's the guy to own there, honestly.
Fair enough.
I mean, if you just look at the history of Peterson, his running back ones in Philadelphia, the best one was in 2016 when he first started there. That was the running back 24. After that, it was running back 42. After that, it was running back 47. So I just don't know if that is worth it, because you legitimately have 5 guys, and really, if you're bringing Sproles back, probably 6 guys that can get touches in that offense. And I don't think Josh Adams is going to get touches. And hashtag free Josh Adams, because Josh Adams was fine last season. But yeah, I think they're just going to cannibalize each other, and it might not be worth it. But if there is somebody that I think is going to win the job out of camp, I think it's got to be Jordan Howard, because Miles Sanders, while he is good and he can catch balls, he's not overly fantastic. Yes, he was the best running back in this class in my mind, but that doesn't mean a whole lot for this class.
Exactly.
And Howard has the reputation now. He's behind a much better offensive line. Like before my computer decided to shut down again, I was saying that the Chicago Bears offensive line ranked 28th in adjusted line yards according to Football Outsiders. So it's not like he was running behind a good offensive line. So yeah, I mean, 200 is definitely a kind of an optimistic projection for Howard, but I just don't know if any one of these guys is really worth their ADP at this point. Right.
I agree 100%. I think you're just kind of taking a shot in the dark right there if you're taking one of those guys. And I agree. I think Miles Sanders is my favorite running back out of this draft class too, but he's already missing some camp time. He's got that little hammy injury. So we saw last year with both Sony Michel and Rashad Penny, you missed that time in camp and you may not get the start of the season. And if Jordan Howard comes in and does well, he may not ever see the field as much as we need him to see in fantasy. So good stuff. All right, we're going to go ahead and do our quick breakout and fake out.
Breakout or fake out?
All right, so I asked each of y'all to bring one breakout, or actually I told y'all to bring 2, but we'll probably just get to one tonight. We'll do one breakout and one fake out from each of you. Justin, we'll go to you first. Give us both your breakout and your fake out as well.
All right, so I think you both would appreciate this because my breakout is going to be Mitchell Trubisky, one guy who I would have loved to have gotten in Scott Fishbowl because of that 50-plus rushing yard bonus, something that he achieved 3 times last year. I think, we everyone talks about, Matt Ryan 2016, Goff and Wentz in 2017, and then these quarterbacks going into the second year of an offense that they have been in. So Nagy last year with the first, you just have to expect him to be better. And Trubisky made a tremendous jump from his rookie year, which he was horrible, 7 touchdowns with 7 interceptions. So he turned that around and he improved. And, he's going to have a very, very high floor, in my opinion, because of the rushing ability. Now, he had more rushing yards than Russell Wilson last year for a total of 421 yards. He had 14 games. The 14 games that he played, he averaged 30 yards per game with 3 rushing touchdowns total. For his rookie year, 59% completion rate, increased that to 67% in his second year. It's tremendous what kind of jump that he made that second year, because coming out of North Carolina, a lot of people were thinking, okay, he's going to be legit. And then as a rookie, he kind of didn't show anything
at all.
And people labeled him as a bust pretty early. So that's going to be my breakout for 2019. I've said it on my podcast before, and I'll say it here. I'm really, really thinking, and I'm a type of guy to draft a quarterback kind of early, 5th, 6th, 7th round. I like to get a guy that I know is going to not really lose it for me, but will win me some games.
Right.
I'm thinking about going about 10, 11 rounds deep into my Homer League this year, 10 to 11 rounds deep, and then just shooting for Trubisky late, because I do think he has quarterback 1 upside, which he was a quarterback 1 last year before his injuries. And on a per-game basis, he was the 11th best quarterback.
Wow, good stuff. Good stats there. All right, let's go ahead and get your breakout, Stompy.
All right, so I've already talked about Albert Wilson, so I'm not going to talk about him again.
Yeah,
of course,
do us a favor.
Do us a favor. Oh, just. And then obviously I've talked about Lamar Jackson being a top 10 quarterback. I've written an article about that. So I'll talk about actually a guy that maybe some people think a cop-out, but it's going to be a double up here. I'm going to say Amari Cooper and Dak Prescott.
Nice.
So just last season, I mean, Amari Cooper's never finished above a wide receiver 16 despite his value in Dynasty many times.
Yep.
He's been extremely disappointing in terms of his value, his ADP versus his actual production. But if we look at last season, he was the wide receiver 36 in 6 games with Oakland. He was the wide receiver 3 in 9 games in Dallas. He increased his PPR points. He nearly doubled his PPR points. He had over 3 more targets per game, over 2 more receptions, over 30 yards, reception yards per game, nearly exactly a half a touchdown more per game. And so, yeah, we saw his volatility. I mean, there were 3 games there that, especially towards the end of the season, which he wasn't great. But I would say that the addition of Randall Cobb, the addition of Jason Witten, Michael Gallup taking a step forward this season should help with that passing game. And
Agreed.
then along with that, Dak Prescott was also, well, he was still good. I mean, he was still a top 10 QB last season. I believe he was either QB2 or QB3 with Amari Cooper there.
Wow.
And you saw the same thing where you saw his completions go up, you saw his yards go up, you saw basically everything go up and interceptions go down. And you saw the same thing for Zeke. When Amari Cooper got there, Zeke was better. And so I think both of those guys, both Amari Cooper and Dak Prescott, can put up top 5 numbers at their positions next season. And Amari Cooper will see a jump into possibly the first round in terms of wide receiver ADP,
Wow.
probably more second. And I really do think Dak could be a top 5. And he really has an argument that he should be a top 5 dynasty quarterback already, but I think he enters that conversation with a top 5 finish next season.
All right, good stuff there. That's a hot take. I know we're doing breakouts and they've been pretty decent in fantasy, but that's, putting them up there in the sort of elite category is a pretty big jump there.
Yep.
I like it. All right, let's get your fake out, Justin.
So my fake out is going to be none other than Derrick Henry, and I'm probably going to get some crap for this because there's half the community loves the guy, the other half hates him.
Yep.
But I've had never will be a Henry truther. I just don't see it in him as a fantasy back. I mean, real life football, he's a really good back to have. He's a big body, could get you that 1 yard if you need it, but I just don't see it. I know he finished he had 585 yards and 7 touchdowns in 4 weeks.
Yeah.
Those last 4 games of the season last year, which he was the overall RB1 in that span. Prior to that, in the first 13 weeks of the season, he was the RB39 when he had a total of 474 yards for 5 touchdowns. So literally in 13 games, he had 474 yards for 5 touchdowns, and in the last 4 games of the season, he topped both those numbers in just 4 games.
Crazy.
And prior to those games, he was basically unusable. Like, you couldn't start Henry unless you absolutely had no other option. He was a 3.7 yards per carry. Lewis was eating a ton of work, and was eating a ton of snaps into his work as well. So you had that there. And until that game in Week 14, Henry never topped 58 yards.
Wow.
Never topped 58 yards. He can run for 90 yards in 1 carry, but he couldn't top 58 yards in the 13 weeks prior to that.
Wow.
So, and then you just look at Tennessee as an offense and as a whole. They didn't get better. I understand they drafted. I forgot the wide receiver that they drafted
A.J. Brown
this year.
A.J.
Right,
Brown.
exactly. Yeah, A.J. Brown. And I don't see how the offense got better. Maybe Tannehill could bring something to them that Mariota just hasn't been able to do since he's been drafted. And then, I noticed that Tennessee was 26th last year in first downs game, which means that's less offensive plays, less time on the field, which means less snaps and less carries for Henry. So until the offense improves overall, it's really hard to invest a 4th or 5th round pick in someone like Henry, who, I'm not even a truther as it is. So, even if he was there in the 6th and 7th round, I don't even think I'm taking him.
Wow. All right, Derrick Henry, a fake out. All right, Stompy, give us your fake out.
I got to go with David Montgomery here. There's been a lot of hype, especially of late with David Montgomery, especially just seeing those videos and people saying, oh, I thought he didn't have any burst, even though he's a NFL caliber running back, and apparently he's not supposed to, or people have said I don't know what's going on. People get too hyped over weird stuff. But there's been a lot of comparisons to Kareem Hunt, and I don't necessarily agree with that. I think the comparisons start and stop with contact balance. And both have fantastic contact balance. I think Kareem Hunt's a faster player, has better acceleration, is able to avoid tackles better, while David Montgomery has to dance a little bit to avoid tackles. He's great at avoiding tackles, but he has to dance a little bit. He's not nearly as quick as Kareem Hunt. I just don't think they're the same player. He also doesn't have near the vision as Kareem Hunt.
Nope.
So we need to cool it there. And I get it. That's what you want it to be because of the Matt Nagy system and what Kareem Hunt did with Matt Nagy in 2017, but it's just not going to happen. And the other aspect is the Bears they use or we'll say this, they didn't have a second running back really outside of Tariq Cohen and Jordan Howard last season. If you look at how many times they ran, Jordan Howard ran the ball 250 times, Tariq Cohen ran the ball 99 times, which I think is going to still be around there. I think he's going to get around 100 carries next season. He's probably going to get around 80 to 90 targets again. And then after that, the next highest running back was Benny Cunningham. And do you really think that David Montgomery is going to just absorb or take all of the vacated rushing attempts, especially after they signed Mike Davis to a two-year contract? I absolutely don't think so. And Mike Davis, I think a lot of people are underestimating Mike Davis. The guy filled in admirably for Chris Carson last season. He was the one that was called upon before Rashad Penny last season.
Yep, and killed all that Penny love was killed.
Right, and he had a fantastic season. He had 514 yards on 112 carries for 4.6 yard per attempt. He had 34 catches on 42 targets. So it's not like he's just like a jag or just an underrated or subpar running back.
Yep.
And the other aspect of this is that basically David Montgomery and Mike Davis, athletically at the very least, are almost almost identical. If you look at it, I believe Mike Davis compares best on Player Profiler to Carlos Hyde. And so does David Montgomery. So it's not like David Montgomery's this super athletic guy. Mike Davis had a 4 dash. David Montgomery had a 4.63. His agility score is not great. Neither is Mike Davis's. And Mike Davis has already proven it in the NFL that he can be a good running back. So I really don't expect David Montgomery to get 200 plus carries next season. I expect them to split it between Mike Davis and between David Montgomery. 150 carries, sure, but what does that mean? Like, he's going as a top 24 running back right now in ADP, and I just don't think he's going to finish inside of the top 24 this season.
All right, that's a hot take right there, because I think everybody's expecting to get that volume, like those 250 carries is what everybody's pointing to. Like, he's going to step into that role and get those 250 carries. Even if he's not very good, he gets the volume. But if you're saying they're going to split the carries between him and Mike Davis, that kills both their values. Neither one of them are going to be viable. So good stuff there. All right, it's time for our last segment of the night.
Get ready for GoingFor2.com's Forgotten Fantasy Player of the Week.
All right, Justin, we'll go to you first. For those of you that don't know how this works, this is basically a fantasy player from the past that has been forgotten about, someone that may have won some championships from some people. Maybe they're one-hit wonders. Whatever the case may be, they just been forgotten about. So, Justin, we'll go to you first with your forgotten player. Who you got?
So, my guy is definitely not a one-hit wonder. He had a few good years in Atlanta. It's a little bit bittersweet because he did win a championship for me, but he kind of was living in the shadow of my favorite running back of all time, LaDainian Tomlinson, and that's Michael Turner. When he went to Atlanta in 2008, was a monster, rushing for 1,699 yards and 17 rushing touchdowns to finish as the second, not even the first, because D'Angelo Williams was the first best back that year, but the second best running back. It was a really interesting time of fantasy at that point because running backs weren't really, aside from the LTs of the world and Matt Forte a little bit later on, running backs weren't really receiving the ball as often. And in the 5-year stretch that he had with Atlanta, he only had one receiving touchdown. but in total, he had 61 in those 5 years.
Wow.
And in those 5 years with Atlanta, he was an RB1 for the 5 years. 2009, he only played 11 games, but on a points per game basis, he was technically an RB1. So, Michael Turner, forgotten fantasy stud.
All right, I love that. I love that call. I had actually drafted Turner that year that he went to Atlanta, and I think his nickname was Michael Burner Turner from San Diego. Yep. So that's a good call there. I like that call. All right, Stompy, who you got for your forgotten player?
This is one of my favorite guys for about 3 years straight in fantasy football, and it's been Jarvis Green Ellis.
Nice.
The law firm. So I remember picking him up in 2010 off of waivers, and he went over 1,000 yards that season and 13 touchdowns with New England. That following season, he did the same thing. He was picked up off of waivers, helped me, I believe, get into the playoffs. I don't know if I won either of those 2 years, but he got 667 yards, 11 touchdowns, and 6 starts. And then the following year, I actually picked him in, or I drafted him because he went over to Cincinnati and became the starter there. And he went for over 1,000 yards, 6 touchdowns that season. So he had a 3 year, 3 years there where he was extremely fantasy relevant, and I, for some reason, always ended up with him on my team.
Nice. If I remember correctly, when he went to Cincy, he wasn't going to be the starter there, right? I think somebody got hurt to open the door for him, I believe. I don't know if I'm stretching your memory a little bit, but I'm almost positive he went there, it wasn't the starter, or he was going to be a split backfield, then someone got injured, and he ended up being the full-on starter for that whole season and ended up being really good. I
don't know if it was Jeremy Hill was there that year or no, because I think it was probably Gio, actually.
Yeah.
I think Gio was there at that point, and Gio got hurt.
Yep, I think you're right. I have to go back and look at it, but I remember that because I remember telling somebody to pick him up because he was going to be the starter, and some guys like, isn't he kind of washed up? But ended up having a really good season. All right, guys, that wraps the podcast up. Let me go around table here and get your Twitter handles one more time before we get out of here. Justin, we'll go to you first. Tell us where we can follow you at.
Yeah, so you guys could follow me at Polizzi_21. That's POLIZZI_21. And you can follow my podcast page at Football Full. That's Football FAUX.
All right, good stuff. And Stompy, where can we find you at?
At FF Stompy for my personal, at DYNO Diagnostic, and at Superflex for both of my podcasts.
All right, good stuff. And of course, you can follow me at Jeff Lambert 77. You can also follow me at GoingFor_2. That's a wrap, guys. Everybody have a good night.